Okay, as was mentioned, I'm by day a high school teacher, by night, I guess, a city councilman in Gardner. Niles is in southwest Michigan, not terribly far from here, so for the Michigan type people here, this is right there. So here's Detroit, here's Niles. Here's South Bend, Indiana, we're right across the border from South Bend, Indiana, and Notre Dame. So some of you may know that area. Fairly small town by your standards, around 12,000 people, largest in Berrien County, but that's not saying much. And our experience has been, this is only our second year with, we are community gardens in Niles. That's kind of where my focus is, because we are, as far as urban agriculture and selling crops, we're not really doing that part of it. We had a real big advocate a couple of years ago. I'm also on the Parks Board in Niles, and he came to the Parks Board and said, man, I want to do community gardens in Niles, and he was really pushing us. And so we formed a committee in, I don't know, December, January, or something like that, a couple of years ago, and by April, April, May, we're tilling ground, and I think last year we just had 3 sites, and things just took off from there. I mean, it really did. It was kind of a you build it and it will come type situation. This year, our second year, we've over doubled the number of gardens. I think we had 3 the first year. Now we've got something like 9 of them going, and most of them are full capacity. When I say that, we generally have kind of like a membership type of situation where people sign up for them, and they operate a little bit differently. So we put the last 2 pictures here are Niles Gardens. This one here looks like a bare lot because I have the planted yet new this year. That's at a church actually in Niles, and they were impressed by what they saw going on the year before and said, hey, we want one of our own. And not necessarily for their church members, but they did it as an outreach to their neighborhood, which I thought was, that's perfect. That's what we're after in community gardens in Niles, is to connect it to the neighborhood. And this last picture is West Side, we call it community garden. And that's actually in front of our school administration building. You can't see the school administration building beyond this is kind of where the picture is taken from. And that one doubled in size this year. It's much bigger than the picture that's on here. It's at least twice that size. And that one is really just an amazing garden. It's got individual plots that people, we this year just taking donations. Last year I think it was $20 for a 10 by 20 plot or something. And this year it was like free will donation. And most people put in more than that. Some maybe nothing, but they get their plot. But there's also communal parts of it where the sweet corn, the potatoes, and the perennials like the asparagus and the strawberries and the raspberries, everybody works together and all share in the harvest. So that's our kind of version of community gardens and where we're going. I was asked to pick an area to kind of focus on, and so I picked sustainability. Sustainability, and this is with apologies to Dr. Winkle. I know I'm not supposed to use Wikipedia, but I like their definition best. They define sustainability as the capacity to endure, and to me that says it all. And you can look at that different ways. Endure as human race, human population, or whatever. So if we look at it from an ecological perspective, a biological system remains productive over time. That's sustainable, something that can keep producing over time. And that's something that's been an interest of mine long before I got involved in community gardens from lots of different viewpoints. Energy, agriculture, whatever. My wife Jody back there and I have been, ever since we moved into our house, we've been putting stuff in the ground and composting and trying to keep a closed system kind of going. So this is just kind of an extension of that in a bigger scale. So what does productive mean then? It's system that remains productive. Planners, administrators, and elected officials like myself, when we talk about productive, like productive land use, a lot of times what they're thinking is put it back on the tax rolls, something that would bring in income or money to the community. But in this sense, it's a little bit different. We're talking a little more basic means of producing food. So to be ecologically sustainable, we want a system that is able to continue to produce food, and that's not something that's usually associated with an urban area. We don't have traditionally thought that way, at least not in the last 50, 100 years. Now luckily some of these concepts are starting to, some of the same concepts that allow food production that we've developed in industrial agriculture can be applicable in the urban environment. In fact, we're getting back to some of the more traditional methods in the urban environment because it's such a smaller scale. And that actually turns out to be, in a lot of ways, more sustainable. You still have to maintain and build the soil, compost, rotate crops, some of these traditional things, and that seems to work better. And in most cases, again, that's by virtue of the small scale, it actually is more ecological, sustainable. You got more diversity, less fertilizer, more composting, and so forth. Community-based agriculture and a ecological or sustainable in other ecological ways. Usually food produced in these urban or community gardens is going to be consumed locally. That means less transportation, which means less fossil fuels. Also usually means there's less chemicals used, fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and so forth. Most of our gardens are basically organic, maybe not certified organic, but that's kind of the direction to go. You have more hand labor rather than mechanical. That means less energy invested, at least fossil energy. All this goes toward reducing our carbon footprint. Elected officials and administrators are concerned about other types of sustainability besides ecological. They're concerned about economic sustainability, and they're concerned about community and social sustainability. I would suggest urban agriculture can help both of those also. In Niles, we have the community gardens with the emphasis on communities, and community, another Wikipedia definition, sorry, Dr. Whipple, is social cohesion. And I think that's a worthy goal of anything. I think it's what you as planners are really working towards. And so a community garden, I don't have time to go into all the examples, but that's my favorite part of the community gardens is getting the community out there, the neighbors come out, see what you're doing. And for me, the food on that basket, I would like to say, oh, that came from the community garden. It very well could have, but I just thought of it this morning, so I went out in the backyard and picked most of that. But what I like is when we work in the community garden is that the neighbors come out and you can share, you can get involved, and that's the education component also. All right, what about economic sustainability? Because that's, elected officials and administrators always worrying about that. Though using the land for a community garden may not compete with the economic impact of, say, a casino or a high-rise hotel, the reality is, of course, most of the time, those are not viable options for where these gardens are developed. It's just land that's been vacant and probably will remain vacant. But it does, I think, through the virtue of the community, the social cohesion, it creates a better place to live, a higher quality of living, which means more people want to be there, which and ultimately can raise property values, which is, again, I think as a plan or something that we're all looking for. Then, of course, there's a more direct economic benefit of people who can now get fresh produce locally. That's the health aspects, more likely to stay in the community for shopping and other reasons. The money stays in the community, and the people can use it, urban agriculture. Some could eventually use it as a way to produce income. Again, we're not there in Niles, but certainly Detroit and other places, that's been a big movement. Just to wrap it up, at a 2005 World Summit, it was determined that sustainability requires a reconciliation of three parts: social, environmental, and economic demands. So that's what it means to be sustainable. You gotta reconcile those during social, environment, and economics. And I think you can see, you know, I hope that's what I'm trying to do is tie together those three things to show how it can really achieve that perfect trifecta. And the vegetables are for everybody. I'll put them back over there by the food. I don't wanna take them home. But that's what you can produce in a little plot in Niles, Michigan, in the city.